hit the record button now. Tonight in the Rock House, we have a very special guest, being Andy McLean from Australia's pioneering band of the 90s, Horsehead. Great album and a support tour of a Who's Who in Rock. Andy and the band disbanded after their third album. Good news for fans out there, they reformed in 2019, and there's some exciting stuff that have happened since the reunion of Horsehead. I'll also talk to Andy about his collaboration with Dave Leslie from the band Baby Animals in an exciting new band called Truck. Tonight, as a very special guest, I also have Sal Truscello from the Perth band Cross-Eyed Lover. Following my interview of Sal, he professed his undying love for Andy and the boys from Horsehead. So, in a very special interview, we have the mega fan meets the mega band. Welcome. First, Andy, how are you, mate? How's things going?
I am very well, and it's lovely to be with you both, I must say. So,
fantastic.
Thank you for having me, Jock, and nice to meet you, Sal.
Likewise, and he's right. It's been an enduring love affair. So thank you. I've been reading this booklet that was with your box set. Of Jeff Jenkins, I think, wrote it, and I really resonated with what he was saying. He like me, like he got lots of memories of when he's seen you, and out of disappointment of that ceasing at some point, but then the elation of it starting again. So thanks so much for joining us.
I'm just trying to think. You saw us in Perth? That was.
No, I was living in Sydney at the time.
Yeah.
So that's lucky for me. So the Annandale, the Metallica support and those other bits and pieces. So all those local venues there.
Sydney was second home. Yeah.
Great days and great nights.
Yeah. Andy, I'm going to take you right back in time, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Right, your youth. What really inspired you to test out those vocal cords? Who was the band? Who was the artist that really inspired you to get those parts?
I wasn't a vocalist till late in my rock and roll career. Well, I've been a vocalist now longer than my early rock and roll career, but I've got a very musical mum, and I was brought up doing my piano practice. And when we were in primary school, I remember, them asking, who wanted to play what instrument. And I was like, the drums, because I just thought they were the greatest thing in the world. And I remember bringing a snare drum home, and I was like 3 foot nothing or whatever, and I could hardly lift the snare drum. So they just said, well, that's not going to work because you can't get it home and back to school. So perhaps the clarinet for you. So I played clarinet for years, and piano at home with Mum, and then the saxophone when I thought, I could get off the clarinet and get into something a little more rock. But still, the moment I was so over scales and just, I just wanted to bash the shit out of things. I don't know why. Maybe my conservative upbringing, perhaps. I don't know. Kick and scream. But I remember when I first bought a drum kit, I was in heaven, and not my family wasn't, because it was ridiculously noisy, as you're all aware. When drummers,
mate, and that's why the neighbour's dog is still barking at you.
When drummers are learning, you are a pain in the ass. And I remember my family going, oh, there's practice pads. You should just use a practice pad. And I think I drove them nuts with the. It was just like, stop. So drumming, rock and rolling. Put bands together, or was in bands through high school. And it wasn't till, this is going so far back, remember when studios cost an absolute fortune. We had made a booking to record something in a studio, and at the last minute our singer was sick, and if we blew out the recording, we were going to lose all this money. So quickly, like, who in the band can sing? So they was passing the microphone around, and must be my Collingwood barracking background. Sorry to break it to you guys, but I had the loudest voice for just getting into it, and they went, you sing. So on this first demo I did, which was really expensive, I drummed and then I sang, and at the end of that I went, well, who would drum when you get all the attention and all you have to do is have a mic compared to packing up all that kit? So I switched from drummer to singer, at that point, and and haven't looked back since. I think at the time that was maybe just at the start of uni, and I was living in a terrace house, and I used to rock up home from playing at the Prince of Wales or somewhere in St Kilda, and I was up in the attic, and we had one of those, you have to get a stick to pull down the ladder.
Pull the old, the ladder down, yeah.
I couldn't leave my drum kit in the shared hallway because it's a share house. Everyone would get pissed off. So I'd have to climb up the ladder, throw a rope down, and one drum pull the drums up into the attic. And so yes, the microphone was far more appealing. So yeah, singer now. There you go.
That's much easier to carry the microphone up. Like Sal, were you always drawn to rock? You come from a conservative household, but have you always been drawn to that rock music?
I think when I was a kid, there was a family across the street that I remember they gave me, and I still have it, one of the first singles from the Easy Beats. I have Sorry as a single, and there were some the older kids that would just pass on their records after they'd had them or whatever, and was right into Daddy Cool, and there were bikies and things that lived further down the street that used to get together on the weekends, and little did my family know that I'd go and sit in the garage, and this is how I got into drums. I'd sit on the floor and I'd watch this drummer's feet just going, rocking out, and they're all drinking beer, and I'm thinking, how cool are these guys, on a Saturday afternoon, just rocking out in the garage, and girls hanging around and band, and it just got me into the rock and roll vibe and listening to records. And I think from very early on I thought, do you remember, when Countdown started, and mind you, I lived in the States for a few years in the early 70s.
Nice.
And
States.
What's that?
Whereabouts in the States?
Oh, in Seattle, way before Seattle was cool. But I remember reading. I remember. Was it Hammer of the Gods, the Zeppelin book? About sharks and vaginas and all that sort of. You remember all those stories? And
I would have only been at the age of sharks at that stage. I would have only been a young fellow, so.
It was all mind-boggling for me, and the Elvis stories, because he was still alive and playing in Vegas at the time, and he was it was Elvis and Evel Knievel, blah blah. I went back to the States when I was a bit older to visit family friends, and Elvis had just died, and my dad was like, we were going to go to LA and do a map of the stars where you go and visit this house or this house.
Yep.
And I was tossing up, I get a choice. Is it Cheryl Ladd from Charlie's Angels or Elvis's old bachelor pad where he had all the parties in LA? And because I'd read enough about Elvis, I knew that that's where the Beatles had been, and that's where I think Zeppelin had been there. So I went, let's go to Elvis's house. And Priscilla was in the throes of selling the LA pad to fund Graceland, because when he died, the finances were a mess.
Yeah.
So we were standing out the front getting our photo taken outside of this LA pad gate, and and a builder came out of the house and came through the gate and started up a chat and found out we were from Australia. I thought that was really interesting, chat, and then he invited us in. So before you know it, I'm in Elvis's house as it's being renovated, and I'm like, oh my God, I've heard this. I've read the stories. This is where the Beatles hung at the pool. And I'm leaning on this brick fence at the back of the pool, and one of the bricks is loose. I think I'm 16 at the time. This is 1980 or something.
Yeah.
Leaning on and I think my dedication to rock and roll at that point. I took my jumper off, threw it over a brick, and brought the brick home. And I now have a brick from Elvis's LA pad sitting pride of place in my bedroom. And when my daughter just recently went to LA, I said to her, you've got to go to Elvis's house. So there was a bit of a family laugh. She went to the LA pad, and she's standing out the front getting her photo taken, She goes, she's actually Zooming me or whatever at the time. She goes, Dad, there's a brick loose in the fence. I said, grab it. So bit by bit, my family's going to bring the LA Elvis pad back to Australia.
If there's any US enforcement watching this video, we know nothing. Moving on. I know Sal's very interested in hearing how you and the band got together. So I'll throw it over to you for the Horsehead questions.
Yeah, thanks. Look, I think, obviously I know a bit about that. You're in 21 Guns beforehand, and then Horsehead formed. So a couple of things I'd like to know. One is, and my 6-year-old son is also curious about, like, we've got it pictured in our head that you're in maybe a rehearsal room or something, and one of the fellows said, hey, let's call the band Horsehead. How does that come about, and how did you choose the name of your band to begin with?
It really was like that, where you're in a band room and you're going, oh my God, we've got a gig. And I think one of our first gigs was at a little place called the Station Tavern in Greville Street in Paran. And I don't think we had a name for the band, but because of 21 Guns, and I think Scott had been in Cattle Truck, and Mick had played. Mick was when Richard Pleasance, he was from Serious Young Insects, and then he'd also just been playing with Boom Crash Opera because Richard Pleasance had the ear problem. So through connections, we managed to get a little gig, and we needed a name. And it was really, I remember at the time, it was like, the elephant, the horse, someone said head, horse head, yeah, or, and then we went, the Godfather thing. That's pretty cool. That sounds heavy.
Yeah.
So let's go with Horsehead. And it was that quick. And the rest is history.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. So some good insight there. And and I suppose when you're having those first jams, it's a pretty amazing sound. It was quite a unique sound from my perspective. It wasn't the stock standard, meat and potatoes kind of Aussie rock. It really was quite intense. So what did it feel like when that click first happened? You thought, wow, yeah, we've really got something here. That must have been pretty special.
Well, it was Cam and I from 21 Guns. Cam had joined even before that. I think I'd played with Cam, and he first joined with me he was playing bass while I was singing. Then he became guitar, and I think towards the end of 21 Guns, when we were thinking, 21 Guns was pretty pop standard, and we were getting heavier, and he was starting to write some real, he was riffing, and then we met Scott. Oh no, it was Maxie we met first at an audition. I think we were looking for drummers, and Maxie came along, and I knew Max from these are all our pasts that are, some of them you just go, oh my God. But Maxie had come from Uncanny X-Men, and I remember going to watch the Uncanny X-Men because of the drummer, because I was a drummer. And I don't know if you remember early Uncanny X-Men, they used to tribal thing, this song, Pakistan, and he was just belting the shit out of the toms, and I used to think he was quite Bonham-esque in his pounding. I mean, the guy's the missing link, let's face it, as far as men go. He's fantastic, and I think when we were auditioning drummers and he came along, it was just like, oh my God, yes. Just when you've got him up the back of your band, you kind of go, oh, I can do anything because he's in my gang. And I think he brought Scotty along. I can't remember how that happened, but Scotty had come from Cattle Truck, and Scotty was very bluesy. So you got Scott bluesy,
wow,
Cam very riff based, and Cam's an orchestration madman. And so all very strong personalities, and Mick was so freaking solid on the bass. It became pretty obvious straight away that, and it was all very, I think you had to be quite feisty with your ideas because it was a strong-headed 5-way mix. Everyone was pretty full on. So you'd throw your idea in there and you couldn't be precious. I think in other bands, you might write an idea and people work on it, whereas in Horsehead, it was like, okay, if that song's going to work, everybody had to put their stamp on it. So everyone's gnarling around looking for their stamp. And so you've got mad orchestration going on, a blues-based thing, a bombastic thing, a riffing away on the bass guitar. And I just had to scream my guts out to get my melodies heard or whatever. And we tried to play I don't know, Soundgarden blew my mind at the time. I remember thinking, there's the contemporary Zeppelin that we've all been longing for. Bad Motorfinger was just an album that blew my brains. But before that, Cam and I were heavily big lovers of Midnight Oil. So there's all that Aussie. I mean, when you think of Aussie, I think of Akadaka and Angels and blah, blah, blah. And Midnight Oil are like a twisted version of that stuff. They bring a real uniqueness, again, orchestration and quirk to it. But somewhere between all that, we had whatever Horsehead was. And I when we first started, we were getting off on it so much. And I think I can talk about Truck, the tie-in there. Truck is when your music is such a joy in the band room and you're not thinking too much about how you're formulating it, it's just what it is because of the lineup, then there's magic in there that is unique to it's your little thing, and you can't overthink it, or it just becomes what it is. And I remember that in the early days of Horsehead. I remember we realised it too, and when there was a lot of attention on us, people going, and when we came to the States and there was people trying to pick the band apart, and we want you to straighten out the rhythm section or do this or blah, blah, blah. I think we'd made a pact of all for one, one for all, and we'd said this it's a gang. And I think we said at the start too, if anybody leaves Horsehead, that's the end. So Horsehead is only those 5 members, unlike other bands that can have, bring in replacements. We'd always said it'll be those 5 or it's not Horsehead, because it was that intense. So there you go.
Okay. Yeah, well, as a fan and a listener, like that, it makes a lot of sense to me, because I hear that tension in the music, and you've got the Fender and the Gibson, and then the drums are a little bit, as you're saying, and there's that counterpart that happens. And I'm not that technical with music, but I can kind of goes in these different directions, but then it sort of comes back again, and I can sort of hear where everyone's putting that stamp on that. I think that's what really, why it really drew me in. It's kind of, there's so much going on in there, and the Midnight Oil reference makes a lot of sense to me. So it's fantastic, and also I did come to the to your first reunion show there in Melbourne, and you said the same thing up on stage, that that was the band, and it wasn't going to be anyone else. And there was a lot of love in the room, by the way, with that night too, if you want to talk about fans. So I'm not the only one that feels that way. But
it was a beautiful thing for us, because again, we're buried in the music, and you think, we never really cracked it. What's it going to be? And that place was packed, and we realized that, there is a lot of love for what we were doing back then. But, I think it was also what a joyous occasion for people that were into that sort of music to all be in a room together and get excited. So we won't take all the credit for the love in the room, but it was certainly, we were thrilled. We have said, and we're going to do another one, we've said that as long as we're enjoying the rehearsal, then we'll do the show. And the show becomes, we're sharing the vibe that we're getting off on in a room in public, whereas I know other bands will try and get their show right because it's a presentation, whereas we're kind of like, when we're feeling like it's cooking, we better get up on stage and try and, we'll do the cooking on stage in public and let you in on it and share the love. And that's what that first gig felt like. We've got another one coming up, which is if we can get the rehearsals organised. Anyway, yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be there, so I'm going to, no pun intended, but second time around, I'm coming around again. So, so and with that, I suppose when it was first floated, the idea was first floated, I know that Golden Robots record had a lot to do with reissuing your vinyl, and were they really the catalyst of maybe that reforming and doing that reunion?
Look, Golden Robot, for all that they are, and people will say all sorts of things. Yes, when the band finally called it quits, which was because there was just somebody just needed to leave, and we just went, well, that's the end then. And we knew that the only way we could all get together is if we're all on the same page. And you know what happens, people go off and have kids or go and move somewhere else. And I think the time was around 2012. I think I came back to St Kilda after building a straw bale house in the woods somewhere. I came back to St Kilda, and Scotty was in a studio, and I walked into the studio, and we were just having such a laugh and a reminisce. And right there and then, I don't know whether you know the band, that we eventually had an album out called The Alternative, and we were jamming on an idea straight up. I grabbed a mic and he strummed along, and we did a song straight up, and we just went, we got it. There's something there. We got to ring the lads. Scott and I started going back through recordings that we were making towards the end of Horsehead, that, and he and I, everybody wrote for Horsehead, but, at that point it was like, where are my ideas? And Scotty was like, where are his ideas? And we're listening to them going, we've got to get the band back together. But, Cam was doing something else. Max was doing something else. I think Max's health wasn't great at the time, and Mick was somewhere else. And it was and I reckon for a little while there, for quite a few years, we were trying to get the band back together, man. I think we managed to jam, but we all knew that it felt a bit forced at the time. It was like, and so we ended up just having a drink and a laugh and a cuddle, and that's probably the best thing we needed. We just needed to go, fuck yeah, we've all got beautiful memories of it. Don't need to force it. See ya, bye. And everyone went their own way, and Scott and I went, well, what do we do with all these ideas that he and I were bubbling on? So we put together an album called The Alternative, which was, we dialed a bunch of friends and got them to all come and join in and play and do an album just through crowdfunding, which we did. And we've got Cam in on that, and we got Maxi in on the track as well. And so it was funny, we, by stealth, we managed to play with the guys, but then we just let it lie for a while, and somehow stars aligned, that we were all starting to be on the phone together a little more towards 2018 or something. Just, mate, how are you, buddy? Blah, 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 just catch ups. And then along came Robot, and he dialed us up. Well, I think he spoke to Cam first and just said, I've got guitar buddies, and apparently I think Robot used to run some pubs, and maybe he'd had us in a pub, and maybe Pete, and he was talking and reminiscing, and just said, I got to do something with your catalogue, because we'd been through Mushroom and Shock, and I think all the records were dormant, and nobody had lifted us onto the modern age and on Spotify and stuff like that. So it was Robot came along and said, look,
wow,
I just want to say to you, I'll honor it. If you've got any other stuff you want to release, I'm here for you. But the best thing I can do for you is bring you into the modern age and put you up on the digital platforms. And let's put something out and put a bow around it and go, what a great band. And that at the time, I think while we were all talking, that appealed to us all. And when he said, go and have a look and see if you've got any other stuff, I think that's when we were going, yeah. And I went around to Cam's house. We found a few tracks. I sent them to the guys. The guys were like, oh my God, how much fun. I know I've just been talking to a guy that worked with Powderfinger just recently, and that they did the same with a few years ago, they did that release of all this unreleased stuff. And it's a joyous thing for bands that have, when you've completely forgotten about tunes and you go back and listen to them and go, oh, shit, yeah. And you remember. So I thank Robot for the opportunity to put all that out. And of course, when we were in such a woohoo bubble, we went, well, let's jam. And when we first started jamming, interesting again, because we're not angry 25-year-olds with shit to break up and rant and rave about. So we had to find what it was, again, that was special about the lineup musically, and we can't play it angrily. What do we like musically? And just getting back into the Scott being the blues, Cam being the orchestration, and just finding that thing again and going, all right, well, this is how you do it at this age, so that we're not embarrassing ourselves trying to be anything other than what we are. And we go through songs and go, that one feels really good still. And then when we had a bit of a set and we went, we can play, we can do this, we just got on the blower and said, let's do a gig. And people were like, sure, Corner Hotel. And we're, really? Corner Hotel? And then
Corner
the
Hotel. Yeah.
Bob's your uncle, away we went. And I think that was so fun for us to go, shit, people care, that's beautiful. And so we said we'd do it again, and then COVID hit. Yeah. And here we are, and Scott's off doing jets, and there's Mark Seymour, and I'm doing the truck thing. We're just trying to get a rehearsal date, because we said we'd do December 2nd, and we're all excited about it, but we can't get in a room at the moment, but we will. And I can tell you that just from the emails and the texts, it's going to be hilarious. So yes, we shall rock again.
Let's go back to that reunion gig at the Corner Hotel. Such an iconic venue to have your reunion gig. Sal, you were there. What was the night like for you?
And speaking about how you are when you're a little bit older than when you were when it was actually happening, you kind of that whole nostalgic trip was excellent. I suppose it was really exciting. And I think, and I suppose for those people there, like all hardcore fans, so there was lots of anticipation. I think the actual gig, no word of a lie. Some bands reform, you think maybe you shouldn't have reformed, but I can tell you, it was just spot on. And even vocally, they're not easy songs to sing, I imagine. There's high all that stuff, and the band was just fantastic. Even the set list was, and I even picked what the first song was going to be, all that kind of stuff. So we had a great night. And I was going to ask, I suppose, now that you're doing it again, picking songs must be difficult when you've got so many good ones. And I'm sure all those classics are going to be there. But do you think we might get a couple of different songs this time around, or you know? Yeah.
Straight away when we said let's do a second one, of course, there was a flurry of, I want to play this, I want to play this. And as I say again, strong-headed. One of the proudest achievements when I look back at my life, I think, is the fact that we managed to keep Horsehead together for so long, because it's harder than any marriage you'd ever be. 5 full-on blokes with all valid opinions and pushing and pulling in different directions. And but yes, we've thrown a lot of songs down. We did have a few rehearsals, I think, before COVID or in some of the breaks, where we went, how do we play that one? And again, trying to find it, because we're not what we were, so the song has to suit where we are or feel right. Can I sing it? Can I sing it with meaning? The lyrics, guitar players, how do they feel about those riffs now? Is that who they want to be? Blah blah blah. And I think we've roughed out a set, and we usually start with a set of 20 and we'll whittle it down. But we've got that set of 20 that we started with is quite different to what we did. Not greatly different. There's like you say, there's some songs in there that we just know we need to do and that we feel are our identity and that's us. But the flavors, it will be a different dish this time around. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to, I think we said on the phone that that's the batch of songs we're going to rehearse. In fact, we start in a couple of weeks. We're going to try and get in a room, and so we'll go from there. We'll whittle it down to the ones that feel good. And I think I'm feeling in better form than I was then because of, Truck is up and running, and I'm really pleased with because singing's such a physical thing. Touch wood. I feel like I'm still hitting the mark that I'm happy with, and certainly the guitarists are just phenomenal. And Maxi's done a lot of gigs, and Mick Valance is always, ringing us and plugging away, and he's got a new bass, and I'm banging away, and I think we'll be fine. It's just so funny when we get in a band room. It'll come together, and I know we'll find the thing that makes it special for us, and then that'll be what we'll go. Well, let's get out there and share this batch of songs. So it'll come together.
I'm sure it will. I'm really looking forward to it. I just have another question about that night, and you mentioned it might have been your daughter, but I think they were in the crowd, and it's the first time they'd seen it. And I'm thinking, I'm sure they would have heard your music growing up and that, but what was their reaction to seeing you doing those songs again, or just seeing you perform?
Yeah, as a dad, I think we started with fear, didn't it? It's like, it's got all through the song. Yeah. I've been bringing up my kids to, just respect the language and blah, blah, blah. But I know I've got Maxie will ring me up and he'll be on speed. I go, kids, it's Maxie. Fucking. So we all laugh, and I think my daughter was not even 18 at the time. Had I just snuck her in a few years ago, I think I don't tell the corner that, but she's now 19 and able to come this next time around properly. And we've had a few of the other kids of other band members. It's really fun to have your kids in the room, because sometimes you think, what they're listening to, you might feel like, are they going to think we're dagging? And I know how music and its phases of what's groovy in their life, blah, blah, blah. But I'm pleased to say that my kids are very into, I've always given them a healthy dose of, Jailbreak. Oh my God, listen to this, kids. I used to bounce up and down on the bed with a tennis racket to this song. Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer. What a great chorus. Listen to this. And we talk about, and Gary Clark Jr. recently, that Bright Lights, Big City, blah, blah, blah. Just what a cool group. And there's a lot of respect in my family for when we're in the car playing the Spotify lists. It's your song, my song, her song. We'll go through take it, and we know each other's what we love, but we're very open to, I think musical education is good. Give them the history. When we talk about music, I talk about where that band came from. And when they play a song, I'll go, oh, you know what that sounds like? And I'll go, have a listen to this. And I'll play a song and think, oh, wow. So a Harry Styles song will sound like something from somewhere else. And that riff, I've heard that before, and blah, blah, blah. And I encourage all that about music. And so I think they're right into that now. I think coming to the gig and seeing the excitement, I think they were just like, oh, yeah, okay. So I was pretty chuffed that they like rock and roll. Sorry, I should say, they like rock and roll, but one of my kids is mildly autistic, and she can't handle the noise. She won't come to gigs, but she'll be supportive of the music. But I often laugh and hear my loving loud music, and noise is something that she just can't handle. So she'll listen to my music in her headphones or quietly, or we keep it down in the car. But yeah, anyway, there you go.
Andy, I need you to speak to my kids, because when they're in the car, it's their music, and let me tell you, it is not rock and roll, man. It is not rock and roll.
You need to play a track each or 2 tracks each, and if they're
where have I gone wrong in life? No, you know what this is like. I want to quickly touch on your collaboration with Dave Leslie, Baby Animals, in the new truck as well. How did you and Dave get together and decide to do this?
I'm so lucky. I got to say, Horsehead, I as I've said, is just a beast of a thing, and it's a big effort for everybody to get it together. And I think as my kids are older now, and I can go out and get into music, and one of the things I love doing is songwriting. And like other blokes love playing golf, I just have a billion ideas on my phone all the time. So a joy for me is, come on, get in a rehearsal room. So I was calling it the Tuesday Night Music Club for a little while there, where I'd just go, because nobody's got anything on a Tuesday. I could actually round up musos into a room and just say, here's an idea. No, I'm not precious about it. Throw your stuff out, let's jam. And it was just rocking along like that. And I was playing with Venom from Barker, and he brought along a mate, Justin, and we've had various lineups. But when we got into the studio, we were going, this is freaking great. And when we got into the studio, we just went, we're not all in the same headspace as to where we want this to go. So Kev, the bass player, who I've known for years, he used to play with Josie Jason, the Argonauts, many years ago. Kev just said, you know what? If we're going to get a guitarist, let's not muck around. Let's go for the best. And he goes, I'm friends with Dave Leslie on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I went, Horsehead played with the Baby Animals a few times back in the early 90s. Yeah. And of course, like everybody, we were all just in love with Susie, and oh my God, male or female, everyone was in love with Susie. And Dave's guitar playing, what a master of the guitar, just like so. And I know the guitarists in Horsehead, it's just Guitar Appreciation Society. So when he goes,
let's not get carried away with Sal here.
When he goes,
the bass player keeps the band together.
He goes, let's give Leslie a call. I go, oh man, that'd be awesome. So he rang Dave, or just sent him a message, and Dave just goes, I'd love to. We've since heard that the guy we were doing the demos with for Truck, when was Ricky Ray, which is their the Baby Animals sound guy, live sound guy. He's got a studio up here in Gisborne. He had heard us in the studio, of course, recording us, and he'd just gone, oh my God. And he'd sent the stuff to Leslie, just going, I've just got this rock and roll band in the studio that, sprinklings of 70s, and it's really true rock and roll. Have a listen to this. And Leslie had heard it and just gone, I love it. And the next thing, Kev rings him and goes, do you want to come and have a jam? And so when he said yes, we later found out that he'd already heard the music and it was like the stars have aligned. So we had a rehearsal, and for a few little gigs there, we had a few little gigs lined up, and we thought, this is pretty cool. We're playing with Dave Leslie, and he's going, this is pretty cool. I'd love to join Truck. And we're going, oh, wouldn't it be great if you could join, if we could get Dave Leslie to join our band? And we laughed because for a few gigs there, we were too embarrassed to ask each other. And then when we finally went, you want to be in the band? You want to be? Oh, thank God. It was just like hugging it out. And we just went, oh, it's a match made in heaven again. And it's been a joy ever since. He brought in a mate of his, Alex, on drums. And I am blessed to, they're the great, if I say it sounds daggy, but they're the nicest guys, and I get to go and rehearse, and we just love rehearsals. I love the blokes just hanging and talking music, and And now we're, because the guy that looked after Horsehead to do the Horsehead reunion, our manager Scott Crawford looks after baby animals as well. It's all funny how these things work out. So he now, of course, looks after Truck and baby animals reunion tour. What a great opportunity! Send Truck out to to slap us into gig roadworthiness, blah blah blah. Get us working. And so we're towards the tail end of that now. We've been doing a lot of shows, and I just go, it's so fun, so good on Dave. He's doing both gigs, and good on Susie for saying, "Truck guys, come on board." And it couldn't be better for the audience. They get 2 Leslie shows, and for us to to hang out with again Susan, Dave in they are Aussie legends, and to play to the audience and say, hey, this is Dave's new band, and it's been great for us. So we're feeling really good at the moment. In fact, we're playing the Corner this Friday night. I think it's a sellout, so I'm excited about. Truck at the moment is the bee's knees for me. It's really pushing all the buttons. It's all the rock and roll that you ever want in your life laid on thick. So I'm loving it.
Are you playing the Corner Hotel coming up? Is there any plans to take Truck on the road across the nation? I mean, you've played a few gigs in Sydney, I know, but looking at Perth.
And West,
We've just done Queensland a couple of times and New South Wales a couple of times, and yes, we're going back to do our first. This will be our second headline in Sydney at the Bridge. Yes. I always laughed with Horsehead. We think the Perth trips were hilarious because they you either have a bit of money and you fly. I think was it Metallica or Live? One of them.
Yep.
Offered us or flew us to Perth because we'd done the Melbourne shows and they went, come on. But other times we've driven and in fact, let me tell you a story. We've just written a song in Truck about it's called the Burning Fields, about the most ridiculous road trip that Horsehead ever did. I think in the early Horsehead days, we put up our hand and said, yes, we'd love to do the Screaming Jets supports for memory. And here's Scott playing the Jets now. And their first gig was in Brisbane. And it's like, yeah, you can do the support, guys, but you've got to get yourselves there. You've got to get yourselves around. So we're like, yeah, sure. So bring the sound guy, bring the lighting guy, all of us jump in a van. So you jump in a hiatus with a trailer. And we do the first leg, 22 hours, whatever it is, drive to Brisbane and play, so you drive overnight and you play that night. Next night's in Sydney. So you drive all the way down to Sydney, drive to Melbourne. Same, it's night after night. Then Adelaide, next night. So you're driving. And then it was 2 nights later, we're in Perth. Of course, jets are probably flying. We're driving across the Nullarbor. And then the next one was back in Adelaide and then back in Melbourne. And I think it was like over 7,000 Ks of this up to Brisbane, down through Melbourne, back across to Perth. And we were losing our freaking minds in this van with, burping and farting blokes and bouncing seats and just for days. And you're just so tired and so off your nut. 4 hours to go. We're 4 hours from home. We've left Adelaide and, we've got 4 hours left of the journey. And there's this grinding noise, I remember. And everyone's like, what the hell is that? And it's like, just ignore it. We're nearly home. And this grinding noise was like getting louder and louder. It's just like, just ignore it. Keep driving. And then suddenly, bang! And one of the wheels of the van, like the axle must have just been seizing, and the wheel kept grinding around until it just became like it broke off the axle and the wheel shot off into this paddock. and it's on fire, and the van's jackknifing away, and everyone's freaking out. And we pull up, and thank God we're all alive and we're all okay. But we look, and there's this bouncing wheel going through the paddocks on fire, and we look at the van, and the axles just go blip blip.
Oh no!
coming, and we're thinking, oh my God, how are we going to get home? We have to ring the hire company and just go, listen, there's been a little bit of a situation. Can you send another van? And they had to put a van on a truck, bring the truck 4 hours, and we were just dying to get home. They had to bring the van to us, swap the van, put our van on the truck, and give us the new van and drive home. But I now look at it, there's a photo of that, and I think it's one of the most hilarious. We nearly did the 7,000 Ks, but with 4 hours left, we lost a wheel and set all these paddocks on fire, which was kind of funny. Anyway, there you go. Now I've written a song about it.
Oh, mate, we're 4 hours out. What worse than you could possibly you talk about flying over to WA. Sal does have a spare bedroom to help save the cost there. So,
I would love to get there, buddy, if we could do it quick and easy. And if, I don't know.
Take a plane, though. Take a plane, don't drive. First class, premium economy, whatever they'll give you, and we'll sort out your accommodation, no problem.
Well, I'm sure it's coming, and I'm sure any accommodation you offer us is better than some of the shit we've been staying in lately. We've been just laughing because we've been doing keep the flights, go for the cheaper flights, go for the cheaper economy. We've just gone, oh, really? Wow. But yes, would love to get to Perth. And my recollection from Horsehead days, we played a few times over there. Again, I've been dazzled by when we did Adelaide again. Adelaide loves their music. I remember Perth just loving their rock and roll. So yes, would love to. Hope it's on the cards.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
Perfect. Sal, we're about to wrap up the interview. Being the mega fan, I'm going to give you the honour of the last question.
Oh.
Because honestly, I think I've lost my job.
I've talked so much. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Look, I won't ask a question, but I'll just say thanks, Andy McLean. I think, it's, and like when you're at Elvis's house, when you're somewhere, you've got a connection to someone that you really admire and respect, it's a fantastic thing. And I hope we get to speak again at some time. I'm definitely heading over to your show in December. I was probably the only person I was happy that it got cancelled because we were in lockdown and I couldn't get there for the first date. So it was a happy delay for me. So I'll be there with the rest of the Horsehead fans. I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope I get to see Truck as well at some point. But thanks so much for chatting to us. A real treat.
Oh, good on you, mate. There'll be plenty of truck shows. Love you to come and see it. And thank you, Jock, for putting this together. Good on you, Sal. Lovely meeting you, buddy.
On behalf of Rockhouse Mag, Andy, we really appreciate your time. Your journey is amazing. And to you, Sal, I think I've lost my job at the Rockhouse base. Thank you very much.
Long live rock and roll, folks.
Long live rock and roll, guys.
Good on you.
Thank you very much.
Take care, guys.
See ya.
Take care.
All right. See you, gang. Thanks.